Hey there, Fiber Junkies! Welcome back to The Color Cauldron. I'm Johanna, the owner and dyer behind Potion Yarns and host of this podcast. If you're a new viewer, welcome and thank you for checking it out. If you're a returning viewer, welcome and thank you so much for coming back. Today I want to show you guys some things that I've been working on, and then we're going to talk a little bit more about how to get the most out of your indie dyed yarns. So, first off, Happy Beltane! It is May Day, May 1st, 2018. I believe this is episode 17. Pretty sure that's right. I will double check that later, but I'm pretty sure it's episode 17. And today is 1st of May. It's starting to finally feel like spring around here, although it's a little overcast and off and on rainy today. It's at least warm and rainy. And yesterday was absolutely gorgeous, 80 degrees and sunny and clear and brilliant. So it's starting to finally feel like spring. I don't know if you guys celebrate Beltane or May Day at all. I didn't used to. Just within the last couple of years, I started actually paying attention and caring about things like that, and was like, you know, it's just kind of like a fun holiday. I mean, I don't do anything super huge. I don't have any like big plans, but I try to just be very aware of the beginning of spring and the feeling of freshness and joy. And if you're not familiar, May Day was a time to celebrate fertility, but also the sensual pleasures. So just enjoying what life has to offer, enjoying everything, however small, that is anything that gives you pleasure or makes you happy or is fun or exciting, even if it's just a teeny tiny little thing. And I've actually had a lot to be really happy about and joyful for today, and I hope that you do too. So, I have a lot of exciting things to show you. This might be a slightly longer podcast. I'm going to try to go quickly and not get bogged down, but it might be a little bit longer because I have several new exciting things to show you and share with you, and then I have a short but very valuable piece of information at the end. Also, I have to apologize if you guys hear a lot of noise in the background, like that really awkward sound that sounded like a huge fart just a minute ago. The city of Kansas City, Missouri has decided to do work on the utility lines outside of my house all this week and most of last week, and it's taking them forever to finish. So I've waited most of today trying to find a time that they weren't making ridiculous noises out there, and I finally realized it's not happening, and I have to work like crazy long days at the salon for the next couple days, and then I have a wedding on Saturday, and so this was my last chance to film this week without feeling stressed about upcoming deadlines and things. So we're just gonna make it work and have as good an attitude as possible, and hopefully you guys can't hear that, but it's super loud and distracting to me because they're literally right out in front of my house right now. So I apologize for awkward fart sounds and things like that coming from their creaky machinery. Okay. So let's start off with showing you guys a couple of finished objects. They're basically finished. I will be honest, they're not in complete state of being finished, but they're bigger projects, so I wanted to show them to you. The first one is the Gaga For You shawl. Look at this beast, you guys. I've been working on this for the better part of a month. Actually, over a month. I think I started it at the end of February. And this was the one that I had to, I think I mentioned several weeks ago on the podcast that I had to rip out like almost completely. I got about a third of the shawl done and had to rip out the entire thing and start completely from scratch because I messed it up so badly. This time around, I did two things. First of all, I got some help from the designer and other people on Ravelry who were knitting this and figured out a few of the mistakes I'd made the first time around that I could fix. And then I also, as I went down, I made a lot more mistakes about halfway down. So the bottom half of the shawl is actually not the way the pattern is written because I'd made a bunch of mistakes and I was getting really frustrated and didn't want to rip it out. And brioche, two-color brioche is really hard for me to take back and fix if it's multiple rows down. So I did it a couple of times and then got really frustrated and was like, you know what, if it doesn't look terrible, I don't care, because the color shifting that I did in this shawl is so busy that I don't feel like you can pick out the individual mistakes. And honestly, I knit the majority of this shawl back in March, and to be perfectly honest with you guys, I did talk about this a little on the podcast, but not a ton. And I also talked about it on my Instagram a little bit, so if you follow me on Instagram and saw any of my stories in March, you may have heard little snippets. I don't like to overshare the tough things in my life, but I also want to be authentic and genuine about when I'm struggling. And honestly, March is like the worst month I've had maybe in my life, or certainly in a while. And we don't need to go into all the reasons why. It's personal stuff that I was working through regarding my own personal way that I look at myself, as well as some of my close relationships with family and friends, and just dealing with a bunch of very big changes coming up in my life. All of that, plus Mercury was in retrograde, and all these things happened all at once in March, and March was really tough for me. So one of the things that I came through, I'm doing a lot better now, thankfully. Thank you guys that sent support and that were aware of some, I hesitate to use the word depression and anxiety too quickly, because I don't want to throw that term around without regard for the people who genuinely struggle with that every day. I don't struggle with it every day, but I think I was struggling with it some back in March. And I'm doing a lot better now, so thank you for your support. But I was knitting a lot of this shawl during that time, and part of the reason I decided not to rip out and knit back when I discovered a mistake several rows down was because I was learning in my own life that I am far from perfect, and that sometimes there's only so much you can do to go back and fix mistakes. And we've had a lot of talk on this podcast about going back, fixing mistakes, apologizing, admitting you're wrong, doing what you can to fix it, but then also letting it go and forgiving yourself and moving on. And that was something I was struggling with in March as well, was being confronted with mistakes, and how do I let go and not get so down on myself that I keep making the same mistakes over and over, and just allow it to be part of the story that makes me a beautiful and perfect being, and how much do I need to say, no, it's worth ripping out and reknitting. So there were moments that I had to rip out and reknit in the shawl, just like in my life, and then there were other times that I just had to say, I'm sorry about that, but I'll just continue going forward and try to do better. And so this shawl was kind of like my personal ode to accepting my own brokenness. So I did not fix every mistake, and every time I look at it, I will remember that I don't have to be perfect to be beautiful. I don't have to be flawless to be warm. I don't have to be always on my A game in order to be useful. This shawl is huge, it's warm, it's beautiful, it's fun, and it's never going to be my favorite finished object, but I did enjoy it, and I learned a lot about brioche and about myself. So I do think this is a great pattern, but I think I warned you on the podcast before, it is not for the faint of heart or the brand new brioche knitter, in my opinion. Which I am not a brand new one, but yeah, I struggled, but it's really cool. It's fully reversible, so you have color on both sides. I hope you guys can see these colors. I used 4 different skeins from 4 different indie dyers. I used 1 skein of primrose yarn, which is, it was a potluck oopsie skein, which is this light kind of aqua, white, and green. I used 1 skein of Woolen Vine yarns in her Woolen Vine number 9, which is this mauve, or mauve as she calls it, sorry, it's on this side, with the gold sparkle. And then I used 1 Adela's Crochet Cottage, Garden of Good and Evil, which was this really variegated, gorgeous one. And then I also used 1 skein of Inked Sheep Fibers, which was this one right here that has the little speckles of black and burgundy and pink and mauve against a white background. I keep saying mauve because Kristen on Woolen Vine says mauve, but I actually call it mauve. So there you go. Anyways, I have not woven in all the ends. As you can see, there's a bunch of ends dangling. One of my goals moving forward is going to be to learn the Russian join, because I've never learned that, and I would like to have fewer ends to weave in. I tried spit splicing on this shawl. I've tried it before many times, and it's never worked for me. So I'm either doing something wrong or just not picking out the right yarns or something, but I'm going to try the Russian join and try a couple other techniques people have mentioned to me recently, but I haven't learned those yet, so we'll work on it. So that's the first big thing I finished. I just need to weave in the rest of the ends. The next thing is my Armand Cardigan, which I've shown on the podcast in various stages of being finished. This one is finished, but I have not blocked it yet, and it does not have buttons yet. But this is the Armand Cardigan. It has this beautiful shawl collar, which I actually followed the pattern on, but I wish I'd actually made it longer and bigger, because I like a really big, generous collar on mine. So I wish I'd made mine longer, but it's still really pretty. My favorite thing about this sweater is that it shows off speckled yarns. This Swamp Witch is a very heavy speckle colorway in my shop, and it's too busy for cables, it's too busy for lace, it's too busy for a lot of things. It really just does best in garter, stockinette, and simple slipped stitches or knit and purl patterns that are kind of big and chunky. And so it looks great in ribbing and all those things. So this sweater just uses 2x2 ribbing and stockinette, and it looks fabulous. But my other favorite thing is that it has pockets. I don't know if you guys could see that, but it's amazing. And the construction of this sweater is so easy. It's knit in one piece basically, and then you just knit the the arms up and then join them to the sweater, and you knit the pockets on as you go. It's very ingenious, and it's a free pattern, you guys. So I will put the link to this pattern below, as well as the Gaga for You shawl, so that you guys can go check out those patterns. Gaga for You is a paid pattern, and the Armand Cardigan is totally free. So this is it. It does not have buttons yet, but today, before I did the podcast, I stopped by Joann's, which is a big chain craft store if you don't know or don't have those in your area, and I purchased some buttons, and these are the buttons that I purchased. I'll try to hopefully show those to you. They're called Organic, like kind of wooden. Organics Elements is the brand, and they're made out of coconut, which I love. And they kind of have this like mossy greenish color. I don't know if you can tell the color on here very well, but it has kind of like a mossy greenish color, and it's just that kind of like rustic feel. And I need 10 for this sweater, so I had to buy 5 cards of buttons. And I loved how the different colors, like from card to card and even button to button, you could tell they all go together, but each one is slightly different because of the organic finish of the coconut button. And I really think, I looked at several buttons with this sweater I took it with me to the store, and I really think that this combination is going to be gorgeous. So I cannot wait to get these on my Swamp Witch sweater. And then I haven't blocked this sweater yet, and I am not a fan of blocking in general. I do believe it's essential for certain pieces, and then there's other ones that I think people tend to overblock, in my opinion. So I wasn't going to block this sweater, but I've decided I do need to do a light blocking because the button band edging, I don't know if you can see that, is really curly. Even though you do ribbing for the button band, it's a very skinny button band. So I think I want to go ahead and lightly block that. And the bottom ribbing is very, very light as well. Sorry, I'm holding this really weirdly. The bottom ribbing is pretty small and short as well, so I think I'm going to lightly block it just to make sure everything lays nicely and doesn't curl. But I love it, and hopefully I'll be able to block that and get the buttons on and wear it on the podcast soon so you can see how it wears, because I've already worn it a couple times. I had it at Knitting in the Heartland last weekend or 2 weekends ago, and it was so cozy. I just wore it without buttons and without blocking, and it was very warm and snuggly. So that is what I finished. I am working on a couple projects right now, and we're not going to go over everything, but I showed this last week very briefly, but I didn't tell you what it was because I was just showing the cute little stitch markers I got at Knitting in the Heartland. But this is my new 2-color brioche shawl that I've started. As you can see, it has these cute little reversible triangles, and then it's just sectioned off with garter stitch. And this is from a pattern, it's a paid-for pattern on Ravelry called Mysteries She Wrote by Suzanne Summers, or Sosu. I did one of her patterns last year. I did, oh, what was it called? Crap, I can't remember the name, but I did one of her really big, awesome 2-color brioche shawls last year. She has really cool modular construction. She does a lot of very bold graphic elements and lots of like asymmetric shapes, or like kind of knitting on a wonky angle. I really like her patterns. And actually this one, the one that I knit last year, which I think it was the Love You Baby shawl, as in love E-W-E, baby, love you baby, get it? It was the Love You Baby shawl, and I loved it. It was a great pattern, and I highly recommend it, but I did struggle a little bit early on with some of the weird wonky construction, and I figured it out and it was totally fine, but it was a little bit tricky for me in spots. This one, I'm finding so far, I like it even better. I think this one is even better written. I think that makes sense grammatically. If not, don't judge me too hard. But I think it's written even better, and it's even easier to follow. And I just love these little triangles. They're so easy, and it's just pretty. And I love the colors I picked. They actually didn't have as much contrast as I was anticipating originally, but I love them. One of them, my color A, which has the little bits of bright aqua in there, kind of aqua-y blue speckle, is from Leon Alexander Yarns. And I apologize, I do not have the label with me. I could not find it for the life of me before filming. So I don't remember the colorway name, but it has something to do with Paris. And I know if you go on their website or if you email them, I'm sure they could figure it out. I will also try to find the name of it and put it on my Instagram with some posts of this coming up here soon. So if you're not already following me on Instagram, make sure you check that out so you can find out the name if you're interested. And then I use my contrast color, which is this kind of yellow and green light speckle here, and it has some pink and peach in it too. That is from Primrose Yarn Company, and it's another one of their potluck oopsies. I, last November, purchased a kit of 3 skeins, and it was mystery kit, so it was just 3 either leftovers like the last one of a colorway or oopsies or random mismatched unnamed skeins, and they just threw a bunch of skeins in a bag and sent them to me. And I got 3 gorgeous colors, and this was one of them. So I thought it would just make it's really, really light, not got a lot of bright colors in it. So I thought it just made a really fun little contrast to this color. And then my third colorway that I'm going to be adding later for the border is another Inked Sheep Fibers. I'm kind of in love with Talia's yarn, if you guys don't know. I'll put a link to her shop and Leon Alexander below because they're pretty good friends of mine, and I use a lot of their yarns coming up on projects, so you'll be seeing a lot of their stuff on here. But this is my final colorway, and again, I think this one is, I don't remember the name exactly, I'm pretty sure this is Sunwell, but if not, Talia, don't hate me. But it's gorgeous. It has like kind of yellowy orange and bright orange into a deep pinky red, with black speckles, and it's just so fantastic, and I think these are going to be really fun. I am a little worried that it might be too much yellow because the Primrose yarn did not look as yellow in the skein, and then when I started knitting with it, I was like, this is a lot of yellow. So if I find that this is too much yellow and I don't like the red color with it, I may switch this one out for more of like a hot pink or a bright pink or something, or possibly my Beast on Lips colorway from my shop. I'm not sure yet. I'm gonna see how that goes, but right now that's the plan, is to make that the third color. So we'll see how that goes. Okay. I am also working on a pair of socks, which we'll be taking a look at in a minute, because that is going to be my example, one of my examples for our how to use your indie dyed yarn section today, which is coming up here in a bit. And I actually finished a pair of socks for the April, I'm doing the Box of Socks Cal, and so far I have not missed a month. But I keep forgetting to show you guys the socks, and I cast on the morning of Knitting in the Heartland, so on April 20th, Friday, 4/20, I cast on a new pair of socks, and then I kept it with me as my knitting project throughout the weekend, and I knit so much over the weekend at Knitting in the Heartland that I actually finished them last week. It took me less than a week to knit a pair, which is awesome. And so I'll have to show those to you probably next week on the podcast because I don't have them with me right now, but they turned out really cool. So the other thing I wanted to show you for show and tell before we get started jumping into our indie dyed yarn section today is an acquisition that I have recently received. Like literally a half hour before I started filming, I received the mail and got this acquisition. I'm so excited. So I've been trying really hard to not go crazy with spending on my yarn budget lately. And it's been a little tricky because I've had a lot of really great opportunities to like trade with other dyers or to purchase from other dyers that I want to support. And it's easy for me to justify sometimes because it's like, oh, I need stuff to talk about on the podcast, or oh, I need to do some research, or oh, I'm collaborating with a designer or a dyer, so I need to buy their patterns or buy their yarn or whatever, and it's a business expense because I need to collaborate. And so it's really easy to let that get out of control, and I have been doing overall a really great job of staying on top of my finances for a new business, but it's really easy to let that get out of control. So I'm trying very hard to minimize my spending, especially because in personal finances, hubby and I are saving up for some home renovations. We have our vacation to Ireland coming up in a couple weeks, and just various things like that that we're trying to save up and do a little bit better with our personal finances too. So I've been trying really hard to resist the urge, and let me tell you, being in this industry and surrounded by it all the time is almost impossible to resist. I'm friends now with so many talented indie dyers out there, and we all love to use each other's yarn because we all believe that when you lift one of us up, you lift all of us up, and that when we celebrate each other's success, we all reap the success. And I'm so lucky to have found so many great friends in this industry that truly believe that and live that and are not petty and jealous and fighting and rivals. We're all friends and support systems for each other, and that's really cool. But that makes it really hard not to buy their yarn. especially because they're so talented. So I gave in a couple weeks ago. It was actually right around the time, remember how I said I was struggling a lot in March? It actually started at the end of February. All of March and the first week or so of April were really tough for me. And I do not want to sound like I'm a proponent of retail therapy, but about the time, beginning of April, things were starting to shift, and I was trying really hard to chase positivity, chase affirmations and truth that would get me out of the mire and help me fight off the feelings of depression and not wanting to do anything, so that I could take control of my life and feel more empowered and feel more content in my life again. And as I was doing that, it was a real struggle in the very beginning to shift the negative thinking into positive thinking, and to shift the unempowered, weak feelings into strong, empowered, joyful feelings. And so one of the things I realized was that I needed to set small goals for myself and then give myself rewards. And reward doesn't always mean spending money necessarily or overindulging. It just means, like, you know, maybe I work really hard, but I reward myself by, if I stay very focused for the first part of the day, I can take off maybe 2 hours earlier than I'd originally planned and just knit a little on the sofa, or maybe just take a little nap, or call my sister and go out for like a girls' afternoon or something like that. And so I started doing some of those little things, and there's an indie dyer that I follow on Instagram. I don't know her personally. I've never talked to her personally, but I followed her since I very first got in business. And I have a major crush on every single skein she produces. She's incredibly talented, and she just seems like such a lovely person, and her Instagram photos are beautiful, and her website is beautiful and easy to navigate, and I have a crush. And so I have been following her for a while, and she put out fading point kits, which, if you don't know, fading point is one of the new Joji patterns that is out on Joji Locatelli. It is out on Ravelry, and I highly recommend you go check that out. I don't know that I'm going to knit that pattern. I love it, it looks beautiful, but I am not sure that I want to knit that particular pattern. But I was loving all the kits that all these dyers were coming out with, and I loved seeing everybody's color combos. And this particular dyer released several kits for that pattern, or for any fade pattern or any big project, because it's 5 skeins. And she had like 5 or 6 different colorways, and I loved each and every one of them, and I wanted to buy them all, but I couldn't, and I struggled with deciding whether or not to purchase one. And after holding off for several days, I gave in and I bought one. And it was kind of a reward for me, because I'd accomplished some serious goals that week, both personally in my emotional battles, and then in my business, and then in some of my personal relationships. So my husband and I decided I needed a reward. So I bought some yarn. And it just came today. It was a pre-order, so that was the hardest part. I ordered it in the beginning of April and didn't get it until today, which is May 1st. And so that was really hard waiting on it, but I can't wait to show it to you guys because it's gorgeous. So the shop is called Machete Shop, or Machete Shop. I don't know if I'm saying that right. Here is her label, and it's just macheteshop.com, and she's on Instagram as Machete Shop. Again, I apologize, Brittany, if I'm mangling your shop name. I do not know. Her name is Brittany. She seems very sweet. Like I said, I've never interacted with her other than purchasing yarn. So I got the green fading point kit she released, and this was what sold me. Yep, if you guys know me, you know I am a huge fan of green. And look at all these speckles, you guys. Oh my god. This is called Grassroots, and it's her simple sock, which is 75/25 superwash merino nylon, 463 yards, and it's a 4-ply, so it's really, really smooth. It's gorgeous. It feels like heaven, you guys. I am obsessed, and if she had only sold this colorway, I would have bought like 20,000. I love this. If I could afford it, I would have bought like 16 of these. So this is what sold me on the kit and made me choose the green one as opposed to the beautiful tealy blues or the deep burgundy reds, which was my other favorite. So this is the first color. Then she has this amazing color called Blanca, which is this gorgeous purple lilac with, again, more amazing speckles. Hope you guys can see these, and I hope the light isn't washing it out too much. they're incredibly saturated, which is why I wanted to show them. Crocus is the next colorway, and it's so pretty because it starts like this beautiful pastel, and then it moves into these bursts of bright, crazy fun neon speckles at the end. It's like the perfect blend of everything. And then this one was my second favorite colorway in this one. It's called Kombucha Brew, and it's like this rosy peach, barely there background with all these bright, crazy neon speckles. So in love. And then Santeria, oh, gorgeous, white background with soft pinks, hot pinks, and all kinds of crazy speckles. Love, love, love. So, this is my fading point kit. I don't know, again, that I'm going to make the fading point. I'm seriously thinking about making like a fade sweater or some other kind of big, huge, cozy shawl. I really don't know. I have no idea what I'm going to do with them. I just know that with each skein being 463 yards, I have plenty of options on what I can play with, and I am really excited to knit those colorways. I am so excited. So I'm thrilled to finally be able to check out a dyer I've had a crush on for a year and a half. Cannot wait to knit it up. I'll let you guys know how it's going. I'll probably show you once I finally figure out what I'm doing. It may not go on the needles right away though, because that yarn is so precious and beautiful that I'm gonna have to really think hard about what I'm gonna do with it. But I just wanted to remind you guys that even though I love my own yarns and I love knitting with my own yarns, I strongly believe in supporting other dyers, and I understand that you guys aren't only ever going to buy yarn from me, probably. I mean, if you want to, that's totally fine, but more than likely, if you appreciate good art and hand-dyed yarn, you're going to want to try other dyers from time to time, and I understand. I totally support that. If you support one of us, you support us all. This is a great industry, and I would really, really love to support my fellow artists as well, because I'm like you guys. I got into this because I love beautiful quality luxury yarns, and I wanted to create my own beautiful colorways and put my own artistic stamp on the world, but that doesn't mean there isn't room for everybody else's, and I love mixing my yarns with other people's, and I love just using other people's. So I can't wait to use it. Oh, and I apologize that I'm looking less than fresh today, you guys. It's been a little bit of a crazy day for me running around. I did go into the salon this morning, but just briefly, and then I've been taking care of a lot of paperwork and stuff, as well as the podcast and all kinds of things. And I have dance practice in a little bit, which reminds me, I actually have something on just a personal note that I'm going to share really quickly, and then I promise we'll get to our indie dyed section. So as you guys may know, if you've watched the podcast for a while or followed any of my social media accounts, in addition to doing hair and dyeing yarn, for about 10 years, I have been part of a swing dance performance and teaching team here in Kansas City called the Swingsters, KC Swingsters. I love these people. They've become my dance family. They're like my second family. They're as close to me as my blood family is, honestly, many of them. And so these people have become my best friends, my family, who I go to for support and love and inspiration, and we meet weekly, and sometimes, like last week, we had a big performance on Saturday, so we met 2 or 3 times during the week. So I've seen these guys a lot over the last 10 years. Some of them have been with me from the beginning. Many of them have come on at various points since then, but we're all very close. As my businesses, plural, hair and yarn, have expanded and grown and changed, I have been getting increasingly busy, and I am so blessed and thrilled that Potion Yarns is doing so great and is just going rapidly. It is advancing so rapidly I can hardly keep up, you guys, and it's so exciting. And I'm so excited to see where we go this next year, and next year after that, and the next year after that. But because of where I'm at right now in my personal life and in my business, where I can't afford to hire an assistant, I know I've had several of you guys offer to come work for me, which is awesome. If I could afford to hire you, I probably would, but I can't. So while it's still just me and the hubby making things work, I am having to make some really tough decisions, and this is part of where my depression in March was coming from. I had to make some really tough decisions about where I'm investing my time. So last week, or a couple weeks ago actually, I let the rest of my team know that I will no longer be dancing on the Swingsters starting next week, May 8th. This is a really tough thing for me, and I don't want to bring down the podcast and go into it right now. Just suffice to say, I've cried more tears over this than probably just about anything else in my life recently. It's kind of like losing a part of my heart and my soul. It's been really tough on me, but I know it's the best decision for me and my business, and I'm super excited that Potion Yarns is going so well. I hope that I can someday come back to the Swingsters after I get the business stabilized a little bit better and find some better time management skills. I may be able to go back, but for right now, I'm going to be taking a step back and be more like a background supporter. I'm still going to dance socially and with them when I can, but I'm not going to be going to practice. I'm not going to be leading the team anymore, and I'm going to be just kind of taking a few steps back from that. So anyways, I needed retail therapy. That's why I bought the yarn. So all of that to say, yeah, that didn't really have anything to do with knitting. It was just something I thought I'd share with you guys for my life because it's been really tough for me. And yeah, I'm going to put a link to the KC Swingsters YouTube below here in the description box so that you can go watch some of our videos. You'll see me with varying different hair colors throughout the years, quite frequently popping up, as well as lots of other teammates. You'll see my husband in there a few times in some of the early videos around 2009 and places like that. But go check them out. It's really fun. And if you're in the Kansas City area, please go follow our Facebook or send us a message, or you can send me a message and say, how do I get in contact? And we have swing nights that we do monthly. We have classes we teach, performances we can do for you, and it's really awesome. So I'll put a link in there so you can see what I do when I'm not dyeing yarn and dyeing hair. But let's go ahead and move on to our indie dyed section. I'm sorry this is so long today, you guys. It's getting really out of control. Today I wanted to talk to you guys about sock blanks. I've had some requests to discuss these. I've shown them on the podcast before, but I've never shown them in process of knitting. So that's what we're gonna do today. If you followed my shop for a while, you noticed that within the last couple weeks I did an update with some new blanks that I've been hand painting. So I wanted to go over what is a sock blank and how do you use it. So first off, a sock blank is a piece of knitted fabric. So basically a machine knits a stockinette rectangle, and it can be of varying size and varying gauge. Usually it's out of sock weight yarn. Sometimes it's out of DK or a larger weight or a skinnier weight. It could be out of lace weight, although I haven't seen any, but I'm sure it could be. But you knit it on a machine, and then it's a blank white undyed wool rectangle of stockinette fabric. The dyer then paints or dyes. A lot of people use these for gradient dyeing, so they'll like dye one color into the next color, into the next color, into the next color. These are great for gradient dyeing. You can also do hand painted like I've done here. Most of mine are abstract hand paints, and they're one of a kinds. So even if I repeat, like I may do another lips one soon, but it won't be exactly like this one. But you can do like crazy speckles like I've done. You can do big swaths of color, which I'll show you on another one here. You can do all one color if you want. You can dye it with various different methods. But you paint or dye it, and yes, I do paint with the acid dyes that I use on all of my yarns. So these are the exact same products I use for my In the Skein and my spinning fiber yarns and fiber. It's not paint or any kind of other product. There are some different techniques I have to do in order to make this work out, but it's the same product and it's set the same way, so you won't have bleeding or anything like that. Once it's in there, it's in there. And then when you go to knit from it, you just take one end and you unravel, and you knit from it as it unravels. Your sock blanks can be single knit, which means there's one strand of yarn and you just knit from it. You knit directly from it as you unravel it, and it's just one strand of yarn. Or mine that I have currently in the shop right now are all double knit, which means that there's 2 strands of yarn. I don't know if you can see that. 2 strands of yarn for each stitch. So when I pull this, 2 strands of yarn come out instead of 1. That makes it perfect for doing 2 at a time socks like I'm doing here, or another project 2 at a time, gloves, sleeves, whatever you want to do. Also, you can just pull the 2 and you can knit one row with one strand, knit the next round or row with the next strand if you're doing just one project like a sweater body or a shawl or something like that. There's various different things you can do. So I wanted to show you what I've been doing. So I'm using this Kiss Me blank that I painted recently. It did not sell at Knitting in the Heartland, so guess what? It came home with me. And these are the socks that I'm knitting. As you can see, the speckles that were in the background are knitting up as just this very heavy speckled kind of crazy fun random colorway. And since these were double knit, they're not maybe perfectly identical, but they're very close to identical here. And then this red section here, red and black section, is where I had one of my small lips and that little section has more saturated color and is kind of like a block of color, so it's creating this little patch of color. Now if you didn't want that patch of color, you could knit one of these at a time, and you could knit with one strand and then the other, and you could like vary up where it is on the strand, or you could cut the yarn, go a little further, etc. But if you don't mind it, which I don't, I kind of like the look of it, you can just leave it and let the chips fall where they may, and that's what you get. These are so fun because the patterns will knit up completely different, and it's all different, and it depends on what you're making, what size of socks you're making. If you're making socks, gloves, sleeves, a sweater, a shawl, whatever, it is going to change the pattern. So it's really, really fun, especially if you're one of those people who kind of likes a little bit of surprise and mystery in their knitting, and if you like to watch the colors develop while you knit and be kind of excited and surprised, which I love. It's really fun. One of the questions that I got at Knitting in the Heartland from a lot of people was, how do you make sure that the strands don't tangle? It's just like anytime you're knitting with two balls of yarn. It's literally the same thing. So they will tangle if you're not paying attention. If you're worried that they're going to tangle, every time you finish the end of a round, just make sure that you know which one is where, and if you find that it's tangled, just unwind your yarn until it isn't tangled anymore. You know, it's honestly no harder than knitting with two balls if you're used to doing 2 at a time socks. If you're not used to it, you'd find that method difficult too, but it really just takes a little bit of paying attention, and it's not hard. Now here's a tip if you're struggling with that, or if you just don't want to have to worry about making sure you turn it always the same way or twist it or whatever. If you're worried at all, what you can do is just unravel and then either hand wind, or if you have a ball winder in Swift, you can, or just a ball winder, you can put it into a ball winder that will create a center pole ball for you, and then you can have 2 separate center pole balls, just like you would out of yarn, that you can knit from that way. So you can always unravel this first and then knit from it. Now one thing I wanted to tell you, if you've never knit from a sock blank before, the yarn comes out all crinkly, right? Because it's been machine knit and it's held its shape for who knows how long, depending on how long it sat on the shelf this way before it was dyed, and then how long it sat in the dyer shop before you bought it, and then how long it sat in your stash before you knit with it. It's probably going to be pretty crinkly. So if you look really closely here, maybe you can see this, maybe you can't. My stitches are not perfectly even like when I'm knitting just from a nice smooth skein of yarn. They're going to be kind of pebbly and bumpy. Don't freak out, it's totally fine. As soon as you put it on and stretch it out, it's going to not be so bumpy. And then if it's still a little bumpy, you know what you do? You block it. Or you just wash it, smooth it, lay it flat. Don't stretch it because then it won't fit your foot. Socks are really, really needing to be elastic. But just wash it, lay it out flat to dry, and it'll be just like any other yarn. It'll be totally fine, and all those little kinks and wrinkles will go away. If you're worried, you can always put it on sock blockers and steam it, etc. Some people don't like this, and that's why they don't like sock blanks. They don't like the crinkly yarn, they don't like the pebbly look while they're knitting, they don't like that they can't control what the pattern looks like. If that's you, sock blanks may not be your thing, and that's okay. But for most of us, it's at least worth a try once because they're crazy fun. I'm telling you, these things are so addicting. Now that I've started, I can't stop painting them, and I also can't stop knitting from them. So I wanted to give you a quick little example of how you can start one of these if you purchase one from my shop. Now everybody's going to be different. Some dyers don't put any kind of string through the end of their sock blank, so you just get it and start pulling from the free end. But on mine, I don't want there to be too much unraveling because I want you to see the cool patterns. So I always put either some spare waste yarn or a cotton thread or some kind of yarn or thread through the live stitches so that it comes with a big loop like this. And then that way you know which end to go ahead and cut. So I am using, this is an oopsie. This was the very first sock blank I personally ever dyed. There you go. Nice little rainbow double knit sock blank. And as you can see, I tried some fun painting and stamping techniques with the black, and it just kind of got fuzzy and gross. And they'll make really pretty socks or a pretty shawl. I actually don't know if I'm doing a shawl or socks with this yet, but they'll make a really pretty project. But it just didn't look as crisp and clean as the ones that I have in my shop after I practiced a little bit. So I decided I was going to keep this for me and just knit with it, and use it to show you guys what it looks like. And then I'll just sell the more pristine ones in my shop. So I'm going to show you how to start it. So if you buy one from me, it'll have this nice string in it, and you just cut that All right, so here we have it. And then, trying to see which way is better to pull it out of. Then you just pull out the string that was attached to it. And if you purchase from another dyer who doesn't have the string, usually there will be kind of like a free end, kind of like this, that will let you know how to pull. If you're not sure, because the other end just kind of looks like loops, sorry, you probably can't see that, looks like loops that are open, and there's a little bit here, and you can pull this one and it unravels from this one too. This one is actually not unraveling too well. That's how you know it's like kind of stuck in there. That's how you know that's the other end. So try both ends, and whichever one pulls free really easily is where you're going to pull from. Now this is another double knit blank, so I'm going to separate it, and it's really easy to see the two strands. So I would separate my two strands, and then if I'm doing 2 at a time socks, I would just cast on from there and just knit. If I'm doing a shawl, then I would either knit with one while I wind the other into a ball, or knit with one for one row, knit with the other one for the other row, like I talked about, etc. So you'll just kind of do that. And then you just pull, and it unravels. It's so fun. If you need help, go back to several episodes ago. I did a little technique video where I did how to cast on 2 at a time socks using the magic loop from the toe up. I was going to do that again today with this sock blank, and then I was like, that's silly, I already did a video, so just go watch it. And rather than 2 balls, you will have 2 strands coming off of your sock blank. But it's the same thing. And then that's how you knit with a sock blank. So another thing I wanted to show you guys, here it is, on the Kiss blank that I'm doing. So if you look at this, it has a bunch of crazy speckles, it has a lot of white space, and then it has big sections of color where the lips are at. If you unravel this, you will notice here, hopefully you can see that, is the red and the black from the lips. As you go down the strand, it gets really speckly. There's a lot of white space, and there's little like blips of color along where all of those speckles and like crazy fun bits happen. And I personally love that, because look at how this is knitting up, you guys. Look at it, it's so pretty. I love it. So if you don't love it, you might want to avoid sock blanks, or you might want to look for ones that are more solid panels of color. Like this one has almost no speckles. It has a few, but very few, because it's big, huge sections of color. You might want to look for a blank like that, as opposed to something that has like random blips of color all across the background. If big sections of color bother you, you don't want to buy a blank that looks like that. Another thing to keep in mind is when you're looking at a sock blank like the one I have here, it's horizontal. Some sock blanks will be painted with a seam that goes vertically, and that's easier to see because when you're unraveling, you're going to unravel vertically. So you want to think about how those stitches knit up. So in this section with the purple lips, you're going to have a lot of white background with little blips of color here. Then you're going to have several sections where you have like a little black and then a bunch of purple and then some black and then a bunch of purple and then back to white and little crazy blips of color. So you're going to want to think about how that's going to knit up and whether or not you like that effect. So someone who doesn't like those patches of pooling color would not want to knit with this blank, because that's not going to look great unless, here's another life hack for you, knitting hack for you. Let's say you are given a blank like this and you hate the fact that it's pooling over here. This is just gross to you. What you can do, choose another color, any color from your stash, and knit 1 row or round with your sock blank. Then knit anywhere from 1 to 3 or even 4 row or rounds with the other color, a contrast color. Then knit with your sock blank for a row or 2, then knit with these. It'll break up that pooling and allow you to still enjoy the fun and the crazy fun speckles of the background without getting the pooling that you don't like. Okay, so really try to be good at reading your sock blanks and seeing what's going on vertically, and think, I'm going to be knitting this way across the panel, so I'm going to have several red stitches in a row, and if I don't like that big block of red here, maybe I don't want to knit with this, or I want to make sure that I am breaking that up with some other yarn or contrast color, or you know, making sure that I break it up so that it doesn't create a big block of pooling. I hope that makes sense. So that's all we have time for today. It's probably way over time. I haven't looked at the clock, but I'm sure it's getting late. So thank you guys for your patience, for sticking it out with me. Thank you guys for all of your support. I hope you guys have a really enjoyable week and a great May Day. And before I go, I almost forgot. Last week on the podcast, I talked about knitting at the Heartland and all the fun, crazy things I got there. I showed a really cool embroidered, personalized basket that my friend Melissa made for me with potion yarns all over it. And I mentioned that she made me a really cool t-shirt too. And I'm wearing the t-shirt. Hopefully you guys can see this. So if you can't read it, it says that shit will block right out. I had to, you guys. Oh, it's the perfect, like, flippant comment on my attitude toward perfectionism in my knitting. I don't believe perfectionism and knitting should be in the same sentence. It's supposed to be fun and enjoyable. So thank you, Melissa, for my amazing t-shirt. I love it. And I just wanted to share that with you guys. I hope you guys have a great rest of your week, and I will catch you again soon, but it is time to cast off for today. Love you.